Hi dear students, my today's topic is Constitution. It will not only help the students of class ninth, but it would also be helpful for the students of class 10th and class 11th because it is included in the syllabus of the JK board for the students of class ninth and class 11th. I would be making a short video because it would not be possible to make a full video given the fact that I have to upload it on 2G network. Anyways, let us come to the topic. In class 11th, there is a unit in political science. Why do we need a constitution? We would like to discuss what is a constitution, what are its functions, and what is the role of the constitution that it performs in a society. How does constitution relates to our daily life or our existence? So I would be here highlighting the most simple definition of the constitution. It is a body of fundamental principles or established precedents according to which a state or other organization is acknowledged to be governed. This is the most simple definition, which stresses upon the fact that the Constitution as a document is the embodiment of certain principles. It contains certain rules and regulations according to which a state or any other organization for that matter is run. So, this is the most important thing. It is a body of principles or established precedents. We have both written as well as in unwritten constitutions even in the world today. So it is not only the body of rules and regulations, but it also contains certain precedents according to which states or governments are run. It would also be uh, interesting to highlight that it seeks to establish the duties, powers, and functions of the various institutions of government, regulate the relationship between them, and define the relationship between state and the individual. So it not only describes the relationship between the state and the individual, but also between the individual and the society. For example, constitution provides us rights, but it also lays down certain rules and regulations. It also contains certain restrictions that restrict an individual to interfere in the personal lives of other individuals. So that is the most important thing that is to be kept in the mind. It allows let us go to the functions of the constitution. Before going to the functions of the constitution, let us try to understand the nature and origins of the constitution. Traditionally, constitutions have been associated with two key functions. There were two key functions associated with the constitution. First, they were believed to provide a description of government, a neat introduction to major institutions and their roles. So, traditionally, constitutions have been formed to understand the formation of the government. A clear description of the government has been given by the constitution itself. Not only that, but also the introduction of major institutions and their roles, their functions and duties. Secondly, they were regarded as the linchpin of liberal democracy. So, constitutions in the modern world have a liberal origin. However, constitutions in general aim to lay down a framework in which government and political activity are conducted. But the harsh reality is that none has been entirely successful. Why? The reason is that there is nothing to prevent a constitution being undemocratic or authoritarian. In the case of in the case of communist constitutions, or in some developing states, constitutions have been profoundly illiberal. That means the core purpose of the constitutions have not been uh, reached. Why then bother with the constitutions? The question is that why then we bother with the constitutions if they have not been entirely successful in providing the description of the government, the institutional framework, their roles and duties. That means the very essence of the constitution have not been met. Why then bother for a constitution? The reason is that the machinery of the government or the objective of the constitution is to lay down certain rules for the political system itself. So we can't get those rules from anywhere, from any other source. Constitution is the only source that would provide us with the framework of the political activity, the description of the government, the institutional framework, their roles, and all other organizations will have to work within the limits of the constitution. The idea of a code of rules providing guidance for the conduct of government has an ancient lineage. You would find those codes in Chinese emperors, also Egyptian pharaohs, Jewish kings conformed to the Mosaic laws. However, the constitutions are best thought as a relatively recent development. Although the evolution of British Constitution is sometimes traced back to Magna Carta 1215 or the Bill of Rights 1689 and the Act of Settlement of 1701. However, the age of constitution was initiated by the enactment of the first written constitution, that is the US Constitution in 1787, and the French Declaration of Independence in 1789. These two examples, that is the US and the France, not only provided the form and substance, but also shed light on how and why constitutions come about. So that is the little bit regarding the nature and the evolution of the constitution. I would not be able to describe it in detail. I just gave a cursory introduction. Now coming to the most important part, that why do we need a constitution? It is very simple to understand that constitution allows coordination and assurance. Coordination among the various organs of the government. The first function of the constitution is to provide a set of basic rules that allow minimal coordination amongst members of a society. Today, in today's world where we have nation states, there are a number of nationalities that are residing in almost majority of the states in the world. So there has to be a minimum coordination among the citizens. So constitution is the binding force. It is the only source that will allow the coordination among the citizens, not only among the citizens, but it will also provide coordination among the various organs of the government. It will limit the powers of the executive. It will describe the powers of the judiciary. It will also uh, provide rights to the citizens. It will also highlight the uh, jurisdiction of the legislature. So that is the most important thing, that constitution allows coordination and assurance. The second most important function of the constitution at this level would be specification of decision making powers. The second function of a constitution uh, is to specify who has the power to make the decision in a society. It decides how the government will be constituted. So it will uh, reflect upon the fact that what is the source of sovereignty. All the institutions will have to work in their own jurisdiction, and the decision making power has to be very coherent, that has to be a very systematic. So it is the constitution that will lay down the entire framework, that who will make the decision, what are his limitations. It will also describe the checks and balances, like we see in the US. That is the first written constitution of 7,000 words, but it provides a beautiful system of checks and balances. So specification of decision making powers, and how the government will be constituted. So the entire process of periodic elections, that is the linchpin of the modern democratic system. The periodic elections, the constitution will draw the lines on which the political parties have to work. It will describe the entire process of the political activity that would be taking place. So specification of decision making powers. Third would be limitations on the powers of government. So the third function of the constitution is to set some limits on the uh, what a government can impose on its citizens. So these limits, in the sense that government may never trespass them. This is the most important function of the constitution, because unlike the traditional states where despotic regimes or kings or monarchs used to exercise their powers according to their own whims and fancies, in a democratic system which are run according to the constitutions, the government cannot trespass. The government cannot cross its limits. So the third function of the constitution is to set some limits on what a government can impose on its citizens. Every citizen also has to observe certain limits. The government itself cannot trespass the constitution, although I very much told you that it is not entirely black and white. You would see in the contemporary world there are democracies, but the democratic governments are not there. The constitutions are not entirely abided in most of the developing societies. However, that is not anyway related here. We have to go by the book, limitations on the powers of the government. The fourth and also a very important function of the constitution would be aspirations and goals of a society. The fourth function of the constitution is to enable the government to fulfill the aspirations of a society and create conditions for just society. So we have to ensure that the society is based on a system of justice, where every citizen gets its due share, where none is discriminated, where there is no gender bias, where there are no economic inequalities, where there are no social discriminations. So, the fourth function of a constitution is to enable the government to fulfill the aspirations of a society. The very essence of the constitution in itself contains that the society has certain aspirations. It wants to become a welfare state. That is why you see in most of the constitutions there are preambles, or in constitution of India you would see there is preamble. There are directive principles of the state policy. There are fundamental rights between article 12 and article 35 that are entirely concerned with the provision of justice, that are entirely concerned with the uh, aspirations of citizens to go for a welfare state. The fifth function of a constitution would be fundamental identity of the people. So the constitution itself decides who is the citizen, who is not the citizen. Like you see in the constitution of India, between article 5 and article 11, in the second part, the citizenship is entirely described. So constitution of almost every state in the world describes, lays down certain principles that define who is the citizen and who is not the citizen of the state, who can become the citizen, how can a person acquire citizenship, what are the rules and regulations. This whole process is laid down by the constitution. So citizenship is described in the constitution. That is also a very important process, because this identity that is given to the people gives a sense of belongingness towards the state. It also creates unity among the citizens. So this is also a very important function of the constitution. I hope that I am successful in inculcating certain things that are important related to this topic. Thank you very much. See you again. Bye bye.